Hey guys, and welcome to another episode. Today in this video, I'm going to show you how to repaint your wheels and go from a nasty looking wheel like this to a nice looking one like this. Now behind me, I've got a Ford F250 that I just recently did the brakes on. So if you can tell behind me, the brakes are brand new, calipers are all looking good, and everything looks top notch. Now when I was going to put the OEM wheel back on the car, you can see that, well, it doesn't look that great, and it's kind of shameful to put an ugly looking wheel like this on a car that looks so great. So what did I do? Ta-da! I'm going to show you guys today how to go from this to this. So this right here is what the OEM wheel looks like on the car, with the paint that's fading, it's starting to get old, and as you can tell, the steel wheel is rusting. So today I'm going to show you how to clean up the wheel, prep it, get it ready, spray it, and put it back on the car, and make the car look like it's new again. So step one is going to be removing the wheel from the car. Jack the car up in the air and remove each one of the lug nuts to remove the wheel. Now next up, you need to clean up and prep the area that we're going to be painting. So that means that the entire rim needs to be paint-free, imperfection-free, and if you can, get rid of all of the paint that's on the wheel right now. Now, to get it so that all the paint, all of the rust and everything is removed from the wheel, we can do that many different ways. So you can go ahead and use an impact driver with a wire wheel. Just grab this and rub it along all of the area that has rust, paint, and all that stuff on it. You can do it the good old-fashioned method with sandpaper. You can use an angle grinder with a flap disc, which is made for metal and for stainless steel and metal. Or if you want, you can go ahead and use a dual action sander or a polisher. It all depends on whatever kind of pad you have on here. Or if you want to go a very easy method, now not a lot of people are going to have this, but you can sandblast them. Any way that you do this, you're going to be able to get a nice finish from that. Regardless of the method that you use or choose to use, it all needs to be prepped, cleaned, and imperfection free so that when we lay our paint down and our primer and all that stuff, it's all gonna look perfect once it's done. Now, if you ask me, the easiest method that I like to use is this. So this is an angle grinder along with a flap disc, and this is gonna be able to remove all of this stuff. So it's essentially sandpaper on here that's gonna be sanding away all of this rust, and it's gonna make it look fantastic. Now, before you go ahead and use it, make sure you have a face mask and you have some sort of eye protection for you. Once you're ready, you can go ahead and start cleaning up the wheel. Now once you have the majority of all the dirt, rust, and anything removed and stripped from the wheel, you can go ahead and put your grinder and your flap disc aside, and you can break out your impact gun with a wire wheel. Now this is going to get into any of the smaller, hard to reach areas like here, along the side of the lip, or even this face that you couldn't get with the grinder. So just go ahead and grind off any extra paint or rust that you still have on there. Now the reason why we're doing all of this is that rust is like cancer, so once you have it, it's very difficult to get rid of it. So in order to make your finish in your paint to look very nice, if you don't want the rust to come back very fast, the more rust you get rid of now, the longer and better this wheel is gonna look later. So that's why we're putting in this work now to make this look fantastic. Once you've finished up doing that, you can put your drill and your wire wheel aside, and you can grab your sandpaper. Now I've got 120 grit sandpaper right here on my dual action polisher. I've got a foam interface pad in there so it can conform to any kind of curve, and I'm just gonna be leveling out all of these scratches just so that when you put your primer down and then your paint and then clear coat, you're not gonna be able to see any imperfections in the metal itself. So the substrate is gonna be looking perfect after we're done this step. Now, should your sandpaper get bad and not really sand as well as it was initially, you can take it off and replace it with a new one. Now the only reason why I'm using this machine is because it's gonna be making my life a little bit easier and I can get a nice finish with it. So if you guys don't have a machine, you can pick it up. I'll have links for everything I'm using today in the description box, or if not, you can do all of this by hand. Doing it by machine is just gonna be making your life a little bit easier and saving you time. Now once you've got this done and sanded down with 120 grit sandpaper, you can take this off. And I'm gonna be putting on a higher grit sandpaper. Now this right here is a 320 grit, and I'm now gonna go over the entire wheel, finally, for our last coat with this. Now before we continue and clean up the wheel and get it prepped so we can start painting and priming the wheel, we're gonna go and grab a bucket and we're gonna fill it with hot water. Now I moved to inside and I've got my bucket under here in the sink, and I'm just gonna be filling this up with hot water. Now the reason why I'm doing this is so that the paint, when it goes inside this bucket, it'll be able to be warmed up, and it's gonna warm up the contents on the inside of each one of the cans. And that's gonna allow each one of the spray cans to spray a lot nicer and give us a much nicer fan pattern when we spray it on the wheel. So right here we have our primer, we have our black base coat, and we have our clear coat. Now we're gonna be using all three of these cans to paint up each one of the wheels. Now for this project, I bought 3 cans of each to get this all done. Now we're gonna start off with our primer, and this is gonna be our foundation for all of our layers of paint to adhere to. So this is gonna make it so that our paints will adhere to the steel. Now once that's done, once we put down 3 coats of the primer, we're gonna move down to our paint. Now we're gonna be putting down 3 coats of our base coat. Now you can choose any color you like. I'm gonna be changing up the wheels to black, so that's why I have a black can of Rust-Oleum Gloss Protective Enamel. Now you can go with any color, as I said, and you're gonna spray 3 coats of this until you have a nice color. Once that's done, we're gonna finish it up with 3 coats of our clear coat on top of each one of the wheels. So you have 3 cans right here, and you're gonna need 3 of each to get this entire project done. Now before we go ahead and get started in cleaning up the wheel, I'm gonna put all of these inside of our bucket with hot water, so that when we go ahead and knead each one of these cans, they're all gonna be warmed up and good to spray. So now that we're back at the wheel, we need to clean this up and get it ready so that we can spray our paints and primers onto the wheel. The first thing that we're gonna do is blow it clean. So I have an air compressor right here with a little blowing attachment. And I'm just gonna go over this entire thing just to remove any of the light stuff that's on here. Next up, I'm gonna grab 1 towel. I'm gonna fold it into 4. And I'm gonna put some dupli-color wax and grease remover on this piece. So I've got some right here. I'll have a link for this stuff in the description box. So just open this up. Take the cap off. And apply a little bit onto here. Now we're gonna be rubbing the entire wheel down with this. So it's gonna be picking up any dirt, any contaminants that are still left on the rim, and it's gonna allow us to have a nice bare, clean surface for our paint and everything to adhere to. So you're just gonna go over the entire wheel with this stuff. And because this is all alcohol based, it'll evaporate very quickly. And you can see all that extra dirt that we missed. So you're gonna do this a couple times until when you do that, it comes up perfectly clean. There's the second pass, and I'm probably gonna finish up with a third and maybe even 4th pass over the entire wheel. Now the next step is going to be completely optional. I'm gonna lift up the wheel and slide this piece of cardboard underneath. And that's just gonna allow it so that no paint overspray is gonna hit the bricks underneath the wheel. Now since the tire is still mounted on the wheel, we need to mask up this area over here so we don't get any paint on the tire. Now there's multiple different ways on how to do this. You can use a roll of tape, you can use cue cards, which is a very good option. Now if you don't want to go out and buy cue cards, this is what I like to do. So grab a couple pieces of paper. I've got probably 5 right here. Fold it once like this. Crease it. And you're gonna cut all the way down here. So with a pair of scissors, cut all the way down the middle. So we're essentially gonna be making cue cards out of just regular paper, so you don't have to go out and spend some money. If you guys like the idea of me saving you guys money, like the video and share it with your friends. Now, next up, we need to cut it up this way. So it all depends on how big of a cue card or little mask off area you want. So we're gonna be stuffing this on the side of the wheel. So it all depends on how much room for error you want. I'm gonna be trimming it up in areas about that big. So I'm gonna be cutting it up into 4. 2, 3, and this is our last one. So with those, we're gonna grab these and just stuff them in between the tire and the wheel. And we're gonna continue this for the entire perimeter of the wheel until it's all masked up. Now when you're installing these little pieces on here, if you can, remove the little nubs, so like the little pieces of tire that are sticking out on the tire this way. So there's one back here, there's another one right here. You can push it down more and you can get a better angle when you're spraying. So if there's any like this, just pull it off and then lie these down. Now I'll just show you really quickly. This is what it looks like when you have the little nub there, and once you take it off, it'll be pushed back more like that. So, like that. And for our last one, I'm not gonna be putting it over top like that. I'm gonna be stuffing it on top of this, but behind this one. So we're gonna slide it over like so. Now, when we need to mask up the valve stem, we're just gonna be grabbing a little piece of tape like so, ripping that off, and we're gonna slide it around it and then push the top over top of it. Now, when you're doing that, you just wanna make sure that the tape isn't gonna be touching the wheel when you have it set up like that. Now, whenever you're ready, grab your can of primer out of the bucket of hot water, put the cap on, make sure it's on there, and you're gonna dry this up before you actually go ahead and spray. Because if you get any water on the rim, you're gonna be damaging and really messing up what the finish is gonna look like. So make sure that it's completely dry. Set the towel aside, you're gonna be using that later, and then give the can a shake upside down. Now doing that is gonna make sure that all the contents inside the can are properly agitated. So once you have your can of primer ready to go, we're gonna go ahead and spray this down. Now before we do that, make sure that you have a face mask to protect you from any of the paint that's gonna be oversprayed when we're painting. Then whenever you're ready, go ahead and start spraying down your first coat of primer. Now we're gonna let this sit for a good 10 to 15 minutes, and as soon as this is dry, we're gonna go ahead and spray this down with our second coat of primer. Now while we wait for this coat of paint to dry, we're gonna put our can of primer back into our warm bucket of water so that when we go ahead and spray this again, it's gonna have a nice ready to go spray pattern, it's gonna have good pressure in the can, and it's gonna be ready to be sprayed. Now 15 minutes later, once this is fully dried, we're gonna grab our can of primer out of our bucket of hot water, make sure that it's dried up, give the can a shake, and then spray down coat number 2 onto the wheel. Now once again, we're gonna leave this for another 15 minutes, put this back into our bucket of hot water, come back in 15 minutes and spray this with coat number 3. All right, now comes the base coat. Now the color that I choose for this base coat is going to be black. However, you can paint your wheels any color you would want. This is where that color would change. So if you wanted to make your wheels gray, what you would do is you would have a primer, you'd have a gray base coat as opposed to black, and then you'd finish it with clear. And the same thing goes for any other color. So I just took our can of black out of the bucket of hot water, I gave it a shake, and now it's time to spray down our first coat. So you don't want to go too heavy. Give the can a shake. You don't want to go too heavy. You just want to have it so you have a nice foundation, and you're going to be looking for about 50% coverage within our first coat. Okay, so you're not looking to cover everything in one shot. So that's why we're going to be building up multiple layers. So if you can see right here, we've got a good amount of black on here, but it's not fully black and fully saturated in black. So if you can still see in some areas, there are some parts of gray. That's fine. We're gonna be coming back for a second and even third coat of black after this is done. So we're gonna let this sit for 15 minutes, come back, and then we're gonna spray it again. Now again, just like the primer, we're gonna be putting our can of black back into our bucket of hot water to make it so that the contents are nice and warm. Now onto coat number 2. We're gonna grab our can again, give it a shake, and spray over the entire wheel. So after this coat, you should see 100% coverage. So everything on the wheel should be black, silver, green, or whatever color your base coat is. Now finally onto our last coat of black. So we're gonna spray this down just like we did before, and at this point everything should be perfectly black and completely covered in paint. Now it's time for our clear coat. So we have down our primer and our black. So we have our primer and our base coat down. Now we need to top it up with a layer of clear. So this is gonna be protecting our black and primer from getting all gummed up and all looking nasty over time. So this is what we're gonna be spraying over top. Now we're gonna be putting down 3 coats of our clear coat on top of this, and that's what's gonna give us our nice, rich, glossy finish. So give the can a shake, and then spray down 3 coats of clear coat over top of all of this. Now finally onto our last coat of clear coat. This is gonna be our third and final one. We're gonna be spraying this down over the entire wheel, and then after we're done, we can take off any of the masking. We're gonna move this into the sunlight and then let it dry. So give it a shake and then go to town. Now after letting the paint to dry on the wheel to the right, you can see the difference between before and after. You can see how much nicer the wheel looks. You can see that there's no rust and it looks fantastic using these simple products that I use today. Now once you've let the paint to cure and dry, you can mount it back on the car. Now once you put it back on, make sure you torque up each one of the wheels and make sure that it's torqued to the proper manufacturer spec. Now if you guys have a center cap, you can slap this over top. Now one of these just clips on to every other lug nut. So you just align it over top, if you can, and then just give it a hit. And like that, we're done. And after you go ahead and mount all the wheels back onto the car, you're gonna have a wicked car with nicely fresh painted wheels. If you guys want to pick up any of the paints, any of the products that I use today in this video, I'll have links for all of that stuff in the description box. So if you want to pick up the exact same stuff that I used, you guys can. If you guys have any questions regarding the video, throw it down in the comment section below and I'd be happy to help. Again guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace. You're sick.
So, torque spec. 1 Ugga Dugga or 2?
3.
Gosh. Ooh. Yo, is that heavy?
No.